Critical hit damage is straight up better than critical hit chance. I personally think the devs made a huge mistake when choosing how to display the critical hit damage. And by the end of the video, my goal is to get you to see why I'm saying that. So first off, let's start with how does critical hit actually affect your DPS. In order to make things easier, I'll start explaining using the Guardian R4 launcher, since it has really easy to understand critical stats, having a critical hit rate of 50% and a critical hit damage of 2x. This means that 50% of the time, the weapon will do twice the damage, meaning 1 out of every 2 shots will deal double the damage. Because of this, we can say that your gun, because of the existence of critical hits, will deal a 50% bonus damage, since every other shot will deal an extra 100% damage. But how do we get to that number? Well, it's fairly easy. With every gun in the game, in order to calculate the bonus damage you're dealing because of the existence of critical hits, all you have to do is take the critical hit rate and multiply it by the extra damage of the critical hit. Meaning you're not multiplying 50% by 2, but you're multiplying 50% times 100%, because you're dealing 100% extra damage every critical hit shot. So if we multiply 50% times 100%, we'll get that 50% that we mentioned before. Because every other bullet will deal 100% more damage, then we can say that on average, the gun will deal 50% more damage. Now that we understand the formula, we can start tinkering with mods to see which one will be more effective. If we mod this gun for critical hit chance, then our critical hit rate goes up to 66.5% and our critical hit damage stays the same. Pulling up the calculator, we can now use the formula mentioned before. 66.5% times 100%. 66.5% is now our new bonus damage that we're dealing because of the existence of critical hits. We use the same formula as before. We're taking the critical hit rate and multiplying it by the extra damage of our critical hits. So we went from dealing 50% extra damage because of critical hits to dealing 66.5 extra damage because of critical hit. But what if we mod for critical hit damage? Well, now our critical hit rate stays the same at 50%, but our firearm critical hit damage goes to 2.744. And so, if we use the same formula we mentioned before, we have critical hit rate, which is 50% times the extra damage that we're dealing in critical hit damage. The extra damage in this case is 174.4%. And we're getting a number that is way higher than the previous one we got before. The damage we are dealing now because of the existence of critical hit is a bonus 87.2% damage, as opposed to an extra 66.5 damage if we modded for critical hit chance instead of critical hit damage. One last example here is the Ominous Hound. This weapon has a critical hit rate of 5% and critical hit damage of 1.2. If we do the math, that's 5% times 20%, because it's the critical hit chance times the extra damage. In this case, our extra damage is 20%. So in this case, this gun, because of the existence of critical hits, deals an extra 1% damage. If we mod for crit chance, that is a 1.39 extra damage. And if we mod it for crit damage, that goes up to a 5.48% extra damage. You may be thinking these are only 3 guns. Surely, for some weapons, crit chance is better. But mathematically, this is not true. And I'm gonna show you why. Basically, let's say that instead of this being shown in a multiplier form, it was shown in a percentage form, representing the extra damage. In this case, this would be showing 100% extra damage instead of 2x. If we could then choose to multiply any of these numbers by 150%, it wouldn't matter which one we chose, since the order in which you multiply numbers does not change the end result. This is why in most games, critical hit damage and critical hit rate are additive instead of multiplicative, because if they are not, like in this game, then it wouldn't matter which choice you had if they were both shown in percentage because of math. But since the devs chose to show critical hit damage in a multiplier form, then whenever you're multiplying your critical hit damage, you're multiplying an extra unit of damage into your bonus damage that gets calculated. Because if both numbers were multiplying the percentage that goes into the equation that calculates the extra damage, then that will be fine. But because this has an extra 1 added to it, then the whole math doesn't work, and critical hit damage is simply the better choice. That is it for today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you enjoyed the content, please consider leaving a like or subscribing, and thank you so much for watching.